headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
It's what is going on with Whoopi Goldberg. She seems to have slightly lost the plot, put out a tweet which she has now deleted and apologised for.
It was an episode of The View. She's on this, talk show with other women, and they talk about current events. And one of the things that's happened is that in Tennessee, school board has said that Mouse, which is a graphic novel about the Holocaust, is too advanced for eighth graders, and
Right.
they're saying that it shouldn't be taught to eighth graders. Now, right or wrong, I'm not a fan of book banning, and if you want something to become really popular, go ahead and persecute it. But y'all do yourself. She said on The View that the Holocaust was not about race, that it was about man's inhumanity to man.
Yes.
And co-hosts pointed out that, the Nazis believed that the Jews were a race and inferior at that. And so, yes, part of the Holocaust was about race.
Yeah.
Certainly for those 6 million people and for, other people who are gay, et cetera.
Yes.
She has since had to walk things back a little bit and say, and she did say during the show, it's about man's inhumanity to man, but still it was a pretty big stumble.
Yeah. I mean, also it would appear that the point she was appearing to make was that it couldn't be racist because they were all white, which seemed a very odd thing to say.
It was white people against white people.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't.
No. Now, I mean, many people who have been in this sort of position before, and The View is quite a controversial show, isn't it? Isn't that the one that Sharon Osbourne got kicked off?
So was she on The View? And she might have been on The View.
I think
it's hard for me to keep track of all of
She got kicked off because she supported Piers Morgan in his battle over the Meghan Markle stuff at ITV here.
Right.
And she
I think that
him.
it was a different show, but it was a similar format.
Yes.
Pretty much the same.
Okay. And so will Whoopi Goldberg suffer a similar fate? Because, clearly she's now made a terrible error and she can't be forgiven and she must now be completely and utterly cancelled and she must never work again.
Well, I think it depends on what side of the political aisle that you're on before you actually get canceled.
Yes.
So
isn't that funny?
She's on the proper side. So being canceled, no, her apology will be accepted.
Yes. Although, to be fair, I don't remember the last time I saw Whoopi Goldberg actually doing anything. So I don't suppose if she was cancelled, anyone would notice. She
basically does The View. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about Spotify, since we're in the world of showbiz. Neil Young, of course, who a lot of people under the age of 50 had never heard of anyway, saying that he was going to withdraw his music from Spotify. Strangely, a lot of his music's still there, because apparently he sold quite a lot of his music off, so it's owned by other people now anyway. But it's all quite an interesting sort of storm, isn't it, with Joe Rogan very much representing sort of the younger crowd, and obviously Spotify going after the money.
Well, here's the thing. Spotify is not a music channel. Spotify is a content producer, and Joe Rogan's content makes Spotify a lot of money. Now, Spotify has thrown a little bone into it and said, we'll put a COVID notice anytime anyone mentions COVID. But let's face it, he is their cash cow. His podcast is hugely popular. Rogan is, somebody who has sparked controversy over his comments with COVID and the fact that, he doesn't really believe in the vaccine. He's talked about alternative treatments to COVID, which, this is not an era of the free giving and taking of information anymore. It's, you're either pro-vaccine or you're anti-vaccine, or you're, you're a COVIDian or you're a COVIDiot.
Right.
There is no in between, and there is no discussion.
It's terrible, isn't it? It's a terrible development in a sort of modern civilized society that you can't have any kind of nuance whatsoever. That, if you suggest for a minute, for example, and we've had it here because the government have just reversed the idea of mandating vaccinations for people that work in the health service, right? And now people are going, well, that's outrageous. Of course they should be made to be vaccinated. But you're kind of going, sorry. And if you say that they should have the choice, you're immediately branded as some kind of mad anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist who thinks the earth is flat.
Right. For some reason, we can't talk about this as civilized people and have differences of opinion and say, I culled my information from this person, or I got my information from this person. And this person says there's an anomaly in this in this particular data set. You can't have that discussion anymore because you're either a COVIDian or a COVIDiot, and there is no in between.
There certainly is not. Let's talk about New York City, because things seem to be going from bad to worse in that part of the world. We've seen over the past sort of 2 years or so, de Blasio, the mayor, putting all sorts of restrictions on people's movements. All sorts of vaccine passports have been introduced. We've seen videos of people being arrested for going to restaurants without proper permission, children being escorted out of museums. There's now been police officers shot dead, and there's been an awful lot of reaction to that. There seems to be a lot of gun crime going on. You know, it's becoming almost like a parody of itself in the Escape from New York movie.
So, you know, it's really interesting because under Rudy Giuliani, there were so many crackdowns on crime that he actually cleaned up Times Square. Now, Times Square used to be a place where you went at your own risk.
Yes.
You would waltz down the street and you really didn't know if you were going to run into somebody who was going to take you for everything that you were worth, or perhaps, pick up a lady of the evening. It could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But New York has changed. We're seeing a lot of increased criminal activity pretty much across the nation, and not just in New York. We have these, smash and grabs here in California that have the governor saying, well, what's happening here? It's like, well, there have been a series of laws passed that probably aren't great for trying to crack down on crime. So you're seeing traditionally people on the Democratic side now forced into a position where they have to say, I'm pro-cop because this is too much. It's, this kind of crime is affecting everyday New Yorkers, and we are now having to reverse course from, the anti-cop rhetoric that we heard for quite a while into more of a pro-police thing, because somebody has to arrest people.
Yeah. Well, it is ludicrous.
Pick your favorite.
I mean, I remember when Minneapolis got rid of their police department in the wake of the whole George Floyd thing, and then some months later they decided to bring them all back because guess what? It had become a bit dangerous without the police. So there we have it. And it's
strangely, yes.
It may well be that certain sections of the police haven't behaved as well as they should have done in the past, but it's kind of crazy to think that people will just police themselves.
Right. People will not. And, we do have a policing issue in the United States. It's you can't have somebody acting with impunity who does something like what happened to George Floyd. I mean, you cannot have that in a polite society. But that is one cop or one group of cops as opposed to the entire Minneapolis Police Department, which is not corrupt and not bad. So we have to see a real crackdown on bad cops. But that doesn't mean that you throw away good cops and good policing with the bathwater.
No, exactly right. Just one final story. The Canada truckers, Donna, Mr. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, went into hiding effectively a couple of days ago. Is he still in hiding, or has anybody found him?
Well, he has COVID, so I think he's still in hiding.
Imagine that. I mean, it's incredible, but this trucking convoy really has captured the imagination. I've seen that there are similar things going on now in Australia, similar things going on in the US as well, and it's kind of all but being ignored by the government in Canada, and it's all about travel between the two countries, isn't it?
Right. So, they're having a problem with vaccine mandates. The truckers are. They don't like them. They don't like the fact that crossing the border has become so difficult. And we're at a time period where supply chains are already pretty weak and getting weaker. As we try to get goods to stores and to people. These truckers are saying, you know what, some of these rules don't make any sense, certainly not for us. And actually, we're going to protest about it, and they are.
Yeah, and they're having some success.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.